There was a time when Oprah Winfrey owned almost nothing. No fortune, no television empire, no influence over millions of people. In fact, there were moments when simply having enough food to eat felt like a luxury. She was born into poverty so severe that most people would have assumed her future had already been decided before she could even speak. If you had met her as a child, there would have been nothing to suggest that one day she would become one of the richest and most influential women in the world. But what makes Oprah's story extraordinary isn't that she became wealthy. It's how impossible that outcome once seemed. Behind the headlines and the billion-dollar success lies a life marked by hardships that many people never recover from. She endured abuse at an age when children should only know safety. She experienced rejection when she desperately needed acceptance. She faced losses that could have permanently broken her confidence. More than once, life presented her with reasons to give up before she had even begun. And yet, something remarkable happened. Instead of allowing pain to become the end of her story, Oprah slowly transformed it into the foundation of everything she would eventually build. The very experiences that seemed destined to destroy her became the reason millions of people trusted her voice. While others tried to hide their scars, she learned how to speak about them with honesty. That decision would change not only her own life, but the lives of countless people around the world. What's fascinating is that her journey wasn't driven by luck, nor was it the result of a single opportunity. It was built through a series of difficult decisions, painful lessons, unexpected failures, and moments where everything she had worked for appeared to be slipping away. There were doors that closed, careers that nearly ended before they truly started, powerful people who underestimated her, situations that for almost anyone else would have been the final chapter. But for Oprah, they became turning points. As this story unfolds, you'll discover that her greatest strength wasn't her intelligence, her charisma, or even her talent on camera. It was something far less obvious, something that quietly shaped every opportunity she created. You'll see how she learned to recognize value where others only saw suffering, why one career setback completely redirected her future, and how a young woman with almost no resources eventually built an empire that extended far beyond television. You'll also discover that some of the biggest decisions she ever made happened long after she became famous. In many ways, earning millions was easier than protecting everything she had built. Remaining relevant for decades required a completely different mindset, one that separated her from countless celebrities who enjoyed brief success before disappearing. By the end of this documentary, you'll understand why Oprah's fortune was never simply the result of television ratings or business deals. It was the product of transforming life's deepest wounds into an uncommon ability to connect with people, make difficult choices, and build lasting influence. And perhaps the most surprising lesson of all is this: the greatest investment Oprah Winfrey ever made wasn't in a company, a television network, or a brand. It was in rewriting the story that the world expected her to live. Before success, there was a childhood no one would have chosen. Long before Oprah Winfrey became a household name, she was simply a little girl growing up in circumstances that seemed to offer no path forward. She was born in rural Mississippi in the middle of profound poverty, where daily survival often mattered more than dreams. There were times when the clothes she wore came from sacks once used to carry potatoes. Other children laughed at her appearance, but those moments of embarrassment barely hinted at the challenges waiting ahead. Her grandmother, who raised her during her earliest years, was strict, deeply religious, and demanded discipline. Life was hard, yet it was there that Oprah discovered something few people noticed at the time. She developed an unusual love for words. While many children played outside, she spent hours reading passages from the Bible aloud, practicing pronunciation, rhythm, and expression without realizing she was quietly training the very voice that would one day reach millions. Then everything changed. She left the relative stability of her grandmother's home and entered an environment filled with instability and emotional neglect. The safety she had known disappeared almost overnight. Instead of encouragement, she encountered experiences that no child should ever face. Those years would leave emotional scars that followed her well into adulthood, forcing her to wrestle with fear, shame, and silence, while the outside world remained unaware of what she was enduring. For many people, trauma becomes a prison. It shapes every decision, every relationship, and every expectation for the future. In Oprah's case, it easily could have done the same. Statistics suggested she would struggle to escape the cycle surrounding her. Society rarely expected children from backgrounds like hers to become leaders, innovators, or cultural icons. Yet something inside her refused to surrender completely. Even in the darkest moments, she kept returning to books. Stories became more than entertainment. They became proof that other worlds existed beyond the one she knew. Reading expanded her imagination at a time when her physical surroundings constantly tried to shrink it. Every page reminded her that circumstances were temporary, even when they felt permanent. Looking back, it's tempting to believe success began when television executives finally recognized her talent. But that would miss the most important part of the story. The foundation wasn't built inside a television studio. It was built years earlier, in lonely moments when a frightened young girl chose curiosity instead of bitterness, learning instead of resignation, and hope instead of complete despair. She had no idea those quiet decisions were preparing her for opportunities that had not yet appeared. Before Oprah ever earned her first paycheck in broadcasting, she had already begun developing the resilience that would make every future opportunity matter. The world would eventually discover her voice. But first, she had to survive long enough to believe that her voice deserved to be heard. The moment. She realized her voice could become her greatest asset for years. Oprah believed she had to escape her circumstances before she could become someone important. What she didn't yet understand was that the one thing capable of changing her future had been with her all along. It wasn't money, it wasn't connections, it wasn't extraordinary opportunities. It was her voice, and not simply the sound of it, but the way she made people feel when she spoke. As a teenager, she entered speech competitions and public speaking events, not because she dreamed of becoming famous, but because those stages offered something she had rarely experienced, a chance to be seen for who she was, instead of where she came from. Every competition became more than an academic exercise. It was proof that intelligence and authenticity could momentarily erase the labels poverty had placed upon her. People began noticing something unusual. While others focused on delivering polished speeches, Oprah had an almost instinctive ability to create emotional connection. She didn't sound rehearsed, she sounded real. Audiences weren't simply listening to her words, they were responding to the honesty behind them. That difference would quietly open doors. Winning local competitions led to scholarships and public recognition. For the first time, influential adults started encouraging her instead of doubting her. Teachers, mentors, and community leaders saw potential that even Oprah struggled to see in herself. Their confidence didn't eliminate her insecurities, but it planted a dangerous idea inside her mind. Perhaps her future didn't have to resemble her past. Soon, broadcasting entered the picture. At first glance, radio seemed like an unlikely destination for a young woman with no wealth, no powerful family, and no industry connections. Yet radio rewarded something she already possessed. Listeners couldn't see expensive clothes or prestigious backgrounds. They could only hear sincerity, confidence, and emotion. Suddenly, the disadvantages that had followed her throughout childhood mattered less than her ability to communicate. But success didn't arrive overnight. Every broadcast taught her something new. She learned that speaking wasn't about having the loudest voice in the room. It was about understanding the person on the other side. She became fascinated by human stories, asking questions others ignored, and listening with genuine curiosity instead of searching for the perfect response. That habit would later become the defining feature of her career. Without realizing it, Oprah was developing a skill that couldn't easily be copied. Many broadcasters could deliver the news. Many presenters could entertain, but very few could make complete strangers feel understood within minutes of a conversation. Ironically, the hardships she had spent years trying to leave behind were now becoming her greatest advantage. Because she knew pain firsthand, she recognized it in others. Because she understood rejection, she instinctively knew how to create acceptance. Her past wasn't disappearing. It was quietly becoming the source of an extraordinary connection with millions of future viewers. Still, the biggest test had not yet arrived. Very soon, Oprah would enter television believing she had finally found her place. Instead, She would experience a rejection so devastating that it appeared capable of ending her career before it had truly begun. What seemed like a humiliating failure would ultimately become the event that changed everything. The rejection that nearly ended her careers and revealed where she truly belonged. Landing a job in television should have felt like the breakthrough Oprah had spent years working toward. She had overcome obstacles that most people could barely imagine, built a reputation as a gifted communicator, and was finally stepping onto a much bigger stage. From the outside, it looked like the beginning of an extraordinary career. Behind the cameras, however, a very different story was unfolding. Like many young news anchors of the time, Oprah was expected to deliver the facts with perfect composure. Television executives valued distance, neutrality, and emotional restraint. The ideal presenter wasn't supposed to connect with the audience personally. They were expected to remain almost invisible, allowing the story, not the storyteller, to take center stage. That simply wasn't who Oprah was. Whenever she reported on difficult subjects, she found herself emotionally invested. She cared about the people behind the headlines. She didn't want to read tragedy as if it were just another script. She wanted to understand it. That quality, which would later define her career, was viewed as a weakness in the newsroom. Criticism came quickly. She was told she was too emotional, too expressive, too personally involved. In an industry that rewarded detachment, those comments felt devastating. Instead of believing she had a unique gift, Oprah began wondering whether she simply wasn't good enough. After everything she had survived, she was once again facing the possibility that she didn't belong. Then came the moment that could have broken her confidence completely. She was removed from her position as a news anchor, a decision that many would have interpreted as undeniable proof of failure. Imagine how that must have felt. After years of fighting to escape poverty, after proving herself in school, on the radio, and in television, she was essentially being told that she wasn't suited for the very profession she had sacrificed so much to enter. Most careers never recover from a setback like that. But hidden inside that rejection was a possibility no one else could see. Rather than leaving television altogether, Oprah was given the opportunity to work on a daytime talk program. At the time, it wasn't considered prestigious. Compared to the authority of a newsroom, daytime television was often dismissed as light entertainment with little influence. For many ambitious journalists, such a move would have seemed like a step backward. For Oprah, it became the first time she was allowed to be herself. She no longer had to suppress her emotions or pretend to be someone she wasn't. Instead of distancing herself from people's stories, she could lean into them. She listened with empathy, asked questions that others overlooked, and responded with a sincerity audiences immediately recognized. Guests stopped feeling like interview subjects and started speaking as if they were talking to someone who genuinely understood them. Viewers noticed the difference almost instantly. Ratings began climbing because people weren't tuning in simply to hear conversations. They were watching something they rarely saw on television: authentic human connection. Oprah wasn't performing empathy. She had lived enough life to recognize it. The irony was impossible to ignore. The very trait that nearly cost her career as a news anchor became the reason she would transform daytime television forever. Sometimes failure doesn't mean you're on the wrong path. Sometimes it's the only thing powerful enough to push you toward the place where your greatest strengths can finally be seen. The invisible secret that made millions of people trust her success in television is often measured by ratings, celebrity guests, or advertising revenue. But none of those explain why Oprah Winfrey accomplished something far more difficult. She earned the trust of millions of complete strangers. That kind of influence cannot be bought, and it certainly cannot be manufactured overnight. By the time her talk show began attracting larger audiences, many networks believed they understood the formula for success. Bring in famous guests, create shocking moments, keep viewers entertained. Oprah certainly interviewed celebrities, but she wasn't building her audience around fame. She was building it around something much deeper. She had an extraordinary ability to make people feel safe enough to tell the truth. Whether she was speaking with world leaders, actors, athletes, or ordinary people whose names no one recognized, the atmosphere changed the moment the conversation became personal. Guests often arrived prepared with rehearsed answers, carefully protecting their public image. Yet somewhere in the interview, those carefully constructed walls would begin to disappear. It wasn't because Oprah asked more aggressive questions. It was because she listened differently. Most interviewers spend their time thinking about the next question. Oprah spent her time paying attention to the answer. She noticed hesitation. She recognized emotion hiding behind confident smiles. She understood that silence could sometimes reveal more than words. Instead of rushing to fill those moments, she allowed them to breathe. That patience encouraged honesty in a way few television hosts had ever mastered. Viewers sensed it immediately. They weren't simply watching interviews. They were witnessing conversations that felt genuine. People cried without feeling exploited. They admitted mistakes without feeling judged. They spoke about fear, addiction, grief, failure, and hope, because they believed the person sitting across from them wasn't searching for headlines. She was searching for understanding. This created an extraordinary cycle. The more authentic the conversations became, the more audiences trusted Oprah. And the more audiences trusted her, the more future guests were willing to reveal parts of themselves they had never shared publicly. Her reputation no longer depended on celebrity status, it depended on credibility. That credibility soon became more valuable than any television contract. When Oprah recommended a book, it became a bestseller. When she introduced an unknown expert, millions paid attention. When she spoke about an issue, public conversations shifted. Companies wanted her endorsement. Publishers hoped she would mention their authors. Entire industries began recognizing what became known as the Oprah effect, the remarkable ability of one person's trust to influence the choices of millions. What made this phenomenon so remarkable was that it wasn't built through persuasion. It was built through consistency. For years, audiences had watched her remain authentic in moments of joy, heartbreak, controversy, and vulnerability. Trust wasn't created by a single interview. It was earned through thousands of honest conversations, and once that trust existed, Oprah realized something profound. She was no longer just hosting a television program. She was building one of the most valuable personal brands the world had ever seen, whether she fully realized it yet or not. How she turned vulnerability into her greatest competitive advantage. By the late 1980s, Oprah Winfrey had already become one of the most recognizable faces on American television. Her audience was growing, advertisers were paying attention, and her program was outperforming shows that had dominated daytime television for years. From the outside, it looked as though she had finally reached the destination she had spent a lifetime chasing. But Oprah saw something that many successful television hosts failed to recognize. Popularity could disappear, ratings could fall, audiences could move on. If she wanted to build something that would last for decades instead of seasons, she needed a connection that went far beyond entertainment. She found that connection in the one place most public figures tried to avoid: her own past. At a time when celebrities carefully protected their personal image, Oprah made an unexpected decision. Rather than presenting herself as someone who had a perfect life, she began speaking openly about experiences she had carried in silence for years. She discussed the abuse she had suffered as a child. She acknowledged feelings of shame that had followed her into adulthood. She admitted moments of insecurity, heartbreak, and emotional struggle. It was an enormous risk. Conventional wisdom suggested that revealing such painful memories could weaken her public image. Television executives worried that audiences expected confidence, not vulnerability. Public relations experts often advised personalities to protect their reputation by revealing as little as possible. Oprah did the opposite. She believed that pretending to be perfect would only create distance between herself and the people watching at home. Instead of hiding behind success, she allowed viewers to see the woman who had survived failure, trauma, and self-doubt long before becoming famous. The response was extraordinary. People didn't admire her because she appeared flawless. They admired her because she appeared real. For countless viewers, Oprah became more than a television host. She became someone who gave them permission to confront experiences they had spent years trying to bury. Families began having conversations they had avoided for generations. Survivors of abuse, addiction, grief, and mental health struggles found language to describe emotions they had never been able to express. Her program gradually evolved from entertainment into a place where difficult truths could be spoken without immediate judgment. This shift transformed her influence. She was no longer attracting audiences simply because she interviewed interesting guests. People returned because they trusted that every conversation might help them understand something about themselves. That emotional investment was something competitors struggled to replicate. They could imitate the format of her show, invite similar guests, and discuss similar topics, but they couldn't manufacture the authenticity that came from lived experience. Ironically, the very chapters of Oprah's life that once filled her with embarrassment became the foundation of her greatest strength. The pain she had desperately wanted to leave behind became the bridge connecting her to millions of strangers. And as that trust deepened, Oprah began asking a much bigger question. If her voice could transform lives, why should someone else own the platform that carried it? That single question would soon lead to one of the smartest business decisions in modern media, one that would multiply not only her influence, but her fortune as well. The day she stopped building a show and started building an empire. Most people believe Oprah Winfrey became wealthy because her television show was successful. That explanation sounds reasonable, but it misses the decision that truly changed her financial future. Plenty of television hosts attracted massive audiences. Many signed lucrative contracts and earned impressive salaries. Very few became billionaires. The difference wasn't what Oprah earned. It was what she chose to own. As her program continued breaking ratings records, television networks were happy to reward her with larger paychecks. For many entertainers, that would have been enough. A bigger contract meant a bigger house, greater security, and more recognition. But Oprah had begun thinking beyond the next season. She had spent enough time inside the industry to understand a truth that many talented performers discovered too late. The person who owns the platform usually benefits far more than the person who appears on it. Instead of remaining simply the face of a successful program, Oprah wanted control over how her work was produced, distributed, and protected. That ambition led to one of the boldest decisions of her career, creating her own production company, Harpo Productions. To some, it seemed unnecessary. She was already one of the highest-paid personalities on television. Why take on additional risk? Because she wasn't chasing a larger salary, she was building leverage. Owning her production company meant that every successful episode created value beyond advertising revenue. She gained greater control over creative decisions, licensing rights, international distribution, and the long-term future of her brand. Rather than depending entirely on executives to determine her direction, she began shaping it herself. This was a profound shift in mindset. For most people, success is measured by income. Oprah began measuring success by ownership. She understood that money earned from work eventually stops when the work ends. Ownership, however, can continue creating value long after the cameras stop rolling. That philosophy soon expanded far beyond television. Books, magazines, film productions, partnerships, educational initiatives, and new media ventures all became extensions of a carefully built ecosystem rather than isolated business opportunities. Each new project strengthened the others. Her influence no longer depended on a single television program because she had transformed herself into something much larger than a television personality. She had become a brand. And not just any brand. A brand built on trust, consistency, and credibility. Every new venture benefited from the reputation she had spent decades earning, through authentic relationships with her audience. People weren't buying products because they were heavily advertised. They were buying into a standard they believed Oprah represented. This was the moment her wealth accelerated in ways that salaries alone could never explain. She had escaped the cycle of exchanging time for money, and entered a world where ideas, intellectual property, and ownership created opportunities that multiplied year after year. Yet, perhaps the most remarkable part of her empire wasn't the businesses themselves. It was the influence they generated. Soon, Oprah would discover that her recommendation could launch unknown authors into global fame, transform struggling companies overnight, and shape public conversations across an entire generation. Her greatest asset was no longer the television show she hosted. It was the extraordinary trust she had converted into influence. and influence, when used wisely, would prove even more valuable than money. When one recommendation could change someone's life overnight. By the time Oprah had built control over her business, something extraordinary began happening. Something even she could not have predicted when she was a little girl reading aloud in rural Mississippi. People no longer listened to Oprah simply because she was famous. They listened because they believed her. That distinction changed everything. History is filled with celebrities who have promoted products, endorsed brands, and appeared in expensive advertising campaigns. Most create a temporary spike in attention before the public quickly moves on. Oprah's influence operated on an entirely different level. When she genuinely believed in something, millions of people didn't just notice it, they acted on it. Publishers were among the first to realize this phenomenon. An unknown author could spend years writing a brilliant book, only to sell a few thousand copies. But if Oprah selected that same book for her book club, it could suddenly become an international bestseller within days. Books that had quietly gathered dust on bookstore shelves were suddenly impossible to find. Writers who had lived in anonymity found themselves speaking to audiences around the world. It wasn't magic. It was trust, accumulated one honest decision at a time. The same pattern appeared everywhere she focused her attention. Small businesses experienced explosive demand after being featured on her show. Charities received unprecedented support. Experts whose work had gone unnoticed suddenly became respected voices in their fields. Oprah wasn't merely introducing people to new ideas, she was accelerating opportunities that might otherwise have taken decades to emerge. But with that influence came enormous responsibility. She understood that every recommendation carried consequences. If she promoted something she didn't truly believe in, the trust she had spent a lifetime building could disappear overnight. That realization shaped the way she approached every partnership, every interview, and every public endorsement. She became increasingly selective, recognizing that credibility was a resource more valuable than any business deal. This discipline separated her from many public figures. Fame often encourages people to say yes to every opportunity. Oprah became powerful because she learned when to say no. She protected her reputation with the same determination she had once used to escape poverty. She knew that wealth could be rebuilt after financial loss, but broken trust was far more difficult to recover. As the years passed, something remarkable became clear. Oprah was no longer simply influencing consumer choices, she was influencing culture itself. Conversations about education, mental health, childhood trauma, personal growth, and emotional healing entered millions of homes because she chose to place them at the center of public discussion. She gave visibility to stories that many networks had considered too uncomfortable or unprofitable. In doing so, she redefined what daytime television could accomplish. Yet even as her influence reached extraordinary heights, Oprah refused to measure success solely by ratings, awards, or wealth. She had achieved everything the world associates with success. But privately, another question had become far more important. What would remain after the cameras were turned off? That question would guide the next chapter of her life, where legacy, not fame, would become the true measure of everything she had built. Why her greatest fortune was never measured in dollars. By every financial standard, Oprah Winfrey had already won. She had accumulated extraordinary wealth, built one of the most recognizable media brands in history, and earned a level of independence that few people ever achieve. For many, that would have been the finish line. For Oprah, it became the beginning of a different pursuit. She had spent decades proving that she could create success. Now she wanted to answer a far more difficult question: what is success actually for? It was a question rooted in memory. No matter how many achievements filled her resume, she never completely forgot the little girl who had grown up without certainty, stability, or opportunity. Wealth had changed her circumstances, but it had not erased her understanding of what it felt like to be overlooked. Instead of distancing herself from that past, she chose to let it shape the future she wanted to build for others. That philosophy gradually transformed the way she used her influence. Rather than simply writing checks, Oprah became deeply involved in creating opportunities. She invested in education because she believed knowledge had opened the first doors in her own life. She supported young people whose potential reminded her of the encouragement she had once received from teachers and mentors. She focused on helping individuals develop the confidence and skills to build lives of their own, not permanent dependence on someone else's generosity. This approach reflected a principle that had quietly guided her entire career. Temporary help can solve today's problem. Opportunity can change an entire lifetime. The same mindset influenced her interviews, her productions, and the conversations she chose to elevate. She consistently looked beyond immediate headlines, asking questions about long-term impact rather than short-term attention. While many media personalities competed to dominate the next news cycle, Oprah concentrated on stories that could continue influencing people years after they first aired. That perspective helped explain why her relevance endured, while so many others faded. She wasn't chasing popularity, she was cultivating significance. There is an important difference between the two. Popularity depends on being noticed. Significance depends on continuing to matter. One can disappear with changing trends. The other grows stronger as time passes because it becomes woven into people's lives. Oprah understood this intuitively. Every school she supported, every conversation that encouraged healing, every author whose work reached millions, and every person inspired to believe that their past did not have to define their future, became part of a legacy no financial statement could accurately measure. Ironically, this commitment to purpose strengthened her brand even further. People trusted her not only because of what she had accomplished, but because they saw consistency between her words and her actions. The values she spoke about on television increasingly appeared in the choices she made away from the cameras. Yet success brings challenges that few people discuss. The higher Oprah rose, the more carefully she had to protect everything she had spent decades building. Fame attracts admiration, but it also attracts criticism, pressure, and constant scrutiny. Remaining at the top would require a completely different kind of discipline than the one that had taken her there. The next chapter of her journey would reveal that preserving a legacy can sometimes be even more difficult than creating one. The difficult decisions that kept success from becoming her greatest weakness. Reaching the top is one challenge. Staying there is another entirely. By the time Oprah Winfrey had become one of the most recognizable women on the planet, she had already accomplished more than most people could dream of. Her television show dominated daytime broadcasting. Her business ventures were thriving. Her influence extended far beyond entertainment. To the outside world, it looked as though every decision she made would automatically succeed. Reality was far more complicated. The higher Oprah climbed, the smaller the margin for error became. Every interview was analyzed. Every partnership was questioned. Every public statement was examined by millions of people, each bringing their own expectations and opinions. Success had given her freedom, but it had also placed her under a level of scrutiny that never truly disappeared. Many public figures respond to that pressure by trying to please everyone. Oprah learned that was impossible. Instead, she made a choice that would define the later years of her career. Rather than saying yes to every opportunity, she became increasingly intentional about where she invested her time, energy, and reputation. She understood that every new project carried an invisible cost. Accepting one opportunity often meant sacrificing another. This discipline required something she had spent years developing: the confidence to walk away. There were projects capable of generating enormous profits that simply didn't align with the future she envisioned. There were interviews she chose not to pursue, business opportunities that looked attractive on paper, but threatened the credibility she had built over decades. She understood that protecting trust sometimes meant declining immediate rewards. It was the opposite of how many people approach success. Most believe that greater success comes from doing more. Oprah discovered that lasting success often comes from choosing less, but choosing better. That philosophy became especially important as the media landscape began changing dramatically. New platforms emerged. Social media transformed the relationship between celebrities and audiences. News cycles became faster, louder, and increasingly driven by outrage. Many established television personalities struggled to adapt, while others, sacrificed authenticity simply to remain relevant. Oprah resisted that temptation. Instead of chasing every trend, she focused on principles that had guided her from the beginning: meaningful conversations, thoughtful storytelling, and genuine human connection. Technology changed, audiences evolved, but the emotional needs of people remained remarkably consistent. They still wanted honesty, they still wanted hope, they still wanted to feel understood. That consistency became her competitive advantage once again. Of course, not every decision she made was perfect. Like every influential public figure, Oprah faced criticism and moments of controversy. Some interviews were questioned, certain endorsements sparked debate. No career lasting several decades can avoid mistakes. What distinguished her wasn't the absence of criticism. It was her willingness to acknowledge difficult conversations, learn from them, and continue moving forward without allowing setbacks to define her entire legacy. In many ways, this mirrored the lesson that had shaped her life from the very beginning. She had never become extraordinary because life was free of obstacles. She became extraordinary because every obstacle forced her to make a choice. And time after time, those choices carried her towards something greater than success. They carried her towards significance. Now, only one question remains. What is the single lesson that ties together every chapter of Oprah Winfrey's remarkable journey? From a childhood marked by poverty to a life that transformed millions around the world. That answer is where her story truly comes full circle. The fortune was never the miracle. The mindset was. When people look at Oprah Winfrey today, they usually see the billionaire. They see the private jets, the successful companies, the historic interviews, the awards, and the extraordinary influence she has accumulated over decades. It is easy to believe that wealth is the most impressive part of her story. But if that is all we see, we completely miss what made her journey remarkable. Money was never the miracle. The miracle was the transformation. Think about where her life began. A child born into extreme poverty. A girl who endured experiences capable of breaking almost anyone's spirit. A young woman who entered television only to be told she wasn't suited for the job she had worked so hard to earn. At every stage of her life, there were voices suggesting that her circumstances would define her future. They were all wrong, not because Oprah possessed some magical gift, not because success arrived through luck, and certainly not because her path was free from mistakes. She proved something far more powerful. Your starting point does not determine your destination. Again and again, she refused to let other people's expectations become her identity. She chose education when ignorance surrounded her. She chose growth instead of bitterness. She chose authenticity instead of pretending to be someone she wasn't. When rejection redirected her career, she adapted instead of surrendering. When success arrived, she pursued ownership instead of comfort. When influence expanded, she protected trust instead of chasing easy rewards. None of those decisions made headlines at the time, but together they created a life that changed history. Perhaps the most valuable lesson hidden inside Oprah's journey is that every stage of her success was built on the previous one. The discipline she learned in childhood prepared her for education. Education prepared her for communication. Communication created opportunity. Opportunity became influence. Influence became ownership. Ownership created wealth. And wealth gave her the freedom to leave a legacy that will continue long after the cameras have stopped rolling. There was no shortcut, no overnight success. Only thousands of ordinary decisions made with extraordinary consistency. That may be the most encouraging part of her entire story. Because while very few people will build a media empire worth billions of dollars, every one of us faces moments when life asks the same fundamental question Oprah faced repeatedly. Will your past become your excuse, or will it become your foundation? Her answer changed not only her own future, but the lives of millions who saw themselves reflected in her story. Maybe that's why Oprah Winfrey's greatest achievement was never becoming one of the wealthiest women in the world. It was proving that pain does not have to be the end of the story. Sometimes, when faced with courage, honesty, and relentless perseverance, pain becomes the place where an entirely new future begins. If Oprah's journey inspired you, remember this the next time life convinces you that your circumstances are permanent. The world often judges people by where they begin. History remembers them for the choices they make after that. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this documentary and want to discover more incredible true stories of people who transformed impossible beginnings into extraordinary legacies, subscribe to the channel and join us for the next journey. The next story may change the way you see success forever.